I'm Cynthia, 28 years old. 3 weeks before my wedding, I walked into my fiancé's apartment to find him in bed with my sister. The scene was so cliché it was almost laughable. Eric scrambled to pull the sheets over himself while Amber just stared at me with that defiant look she'd perfected since childhood. No shame, no apology, just pure entitlement radiating from her naked body. "Cynthia, we can explain," Eric stammered, his face flushed red. I stood there for exactly 10 seconds, feeling my carefully planned future crumble around me. Then I did something that surprised even myself. I laughed. "Oh, please. Explain away," I said, crossing my arms. This should be fascinating. But what came next would destroy everything I thought I knew about my family. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt completely blindsided by someone you trusted. You'll definitely want to stick around for what happened next. Let me backtrack to show you how I ended up standing in that doorway, watching my entire world implode. 4 months earlier, everything seemed perfect. Eric and I had been together for 4 years, engaged for 10 months. We'd signed the lease on our beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Portland 3 months ago, the kind of place I'd dreamed of since college. The wedding invitations had been sent, the venue booked 6 months prior. My dress fitted to perfection. Eric worked as a senior financial consultant at Hartwell & Associates, a prestigious boutique firm where image and reputation were everything. My sister Amber was supposedly focused on her nursing program after years of bouncing between jobs and relationships. My parents seemed proud of me for finally settling down with someone successful. I should have seen the signs. The way Amber started showing up at our apartment unannounced after we moved in, how she'd linger after family dinners, finding excuses to stay when Eric was around, the secretive phone calls he'd take in another room, claiming they were work-related. But I trusted them. God, I was naive. The day before I caught them, I'd been at my final dress fitting. Standing in front of those mirrors, wearing white silk that cost more than my monthly rent, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. The seamstress kept gushing about how radiant I looked, how perfect everything was. If only she knew that 24 hours later, I'd be staring at my naked sister in my fiancé's bed. Amber was the first to break the silence. "Look, Cynthia, this just happened. We didn't plan it." Eric nodded eagerly, as if her lie could somehow make this better. "It's true. We were just talking about the wedding stress and things got carried away." I tilted my head, studying them both. Talking about wedding stress. In bed. Naked. How therapeutic. The sarcasm felt good. Like armor protecting me from the devastation threatening to consume me. Honestly, if I hadn't developed a sense of humor about my family's disasters years ago, I'd have gone insane by now. "Don't be dramatic," Amber snapped, finally showing some emotion. "These things happen. You'll get over it." That's when I knew this wasn't just a moment of weakness. This was who they really were. I turned and walked out without another word, leaving them tangled in sheets that still smelled like my perfume from the night before. Outside, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the apartment building where I'd thought I'd be living happily ever after. Then I called my mom. "Mom, I need to talk to you. Eric cheated on me with Amber." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "Are you sure, honey?" she finally asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Maybe you misunderstood what you saw." Misunderstood. Right, because there are so many ways to misinterpret finding your sister naked in your fiancé's bed. "I'm pretty sure, Mom. They weren't exactly subtle about it." "Oh, Cynthia." She sighed heavily. "This is such terrible timing with the wedding so close." Terrible timing. Not terrible betrayal. Not devastating heartbreak. Terrible timing. "I'm calling off the wedding," I said firmly. "I can't marry him after this." "Now hold on," Mom's tone sharpened. "Don't make any hasty decisions. You're upset, which is understandable, but think about what you're throwing away. Eric is a good man with a stable job. These things can be worked through." I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. Was my mother seriously trying to talk me into marrying a cheater? "Mom, he was sleeping with Amber." "My sister. There's no working through that." "People make mistakes, sweetie, especially when they're under pressure. Wedding planning is stressful for everyone." Before I could respond, I heard voices in the background. Dad was there, and it sounded like Amber had already arrived. Of course she had. "Come over," Mom said. "We need to discuss this as a family." I drove to my childhood home in a daze, the familiar tree-lined streets blurring past. The house looked the same as always, yellow siding with white trim, Mom's prize-winning rose garden in full bloom, so normal, so perfect on the surface. Inside, the scene was anything but normal. Amber sat curled up on the couch, eyes red from crying. Dad paced by the window while Mom hovered protectively near my sister. "Cynthia!" Amber jumped up when I walked in. "Thank God. I've been so worried about you." The audacity was breathtaking. She was worried about me? "We need to talk about this situation," Dad said, his voice stern. "Rationally. Situation. Not betrayal, not affair. Situation." "There's nothing to discuss," I replied. "The wedding is off." Amber's face crumpled. "Cynthia, please. I know this looks bad, but it's more complicated than you think." "Complicated how exactly?" She glanced at Eric, who'd been sitting silently in the corner looking like he wanted to disappear. He cleared his throat nervously. "We've been fighting our feelings for months," he said. "We never meant for this to happen. But sometimes you can't control who you fall in love with." Love. He was calling this love. "How romantic," I said dryly. "A real fairy tale. Cheating prince finds his princess in his fiancé's family. I'm sure Disney will want the rights." Mom shot me a warning look. Sarcasm isn't helping anyone right now. And what exactly would help? Group therapy? Couples counseling for the happy throuple? "Cynthia Marie," Dad's voice boomed. "That's enough. We're trying to handle this maturely." Maturely. Because there's a mature way to handle your fiancé sleeping with your sister. That's when Amber dropped her bombshell. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Eric's face went white. Mom gasped and immediately moved closer to Amber. Dad stopped pacing. And me? I felt the last piece of my old life crumble to dust. "How far along?" Mom asked gently, already shifting into grandmother mode. 2 months, Amber whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I just found out yesterday." 2 months. 2 months of lying to my face. 2 months of pretending to care about my wedding while carrying my fiancé's child. The family closed ranks around her instantly. Dad's stern expression melted into concern. Mom started making plans, talking about doctor appointments and prenatal vitamins. Eric looked shell-shocked but moved to sit beside Amber, taking her hand. I stood there watching my family rally around the 2 people who'd betrayed me most, watching them celebrate new life while completely ignoring the fact that they'd just murdered my future. "We'll figure this out," Mom said firmly. "The baby changes everything." She was right about that. The baby did change everything. It just wasn't going to change things the way she expected. "The venue is already paid for," Mom said the next morning, as if that was the most pressing issue. "The catering, the flowers, everything." We were sitting around the kitchen table, the same one where I'd eaten breakfast before school for 18 years. Amber looked pale but determined, her hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. Eric sat beside her, playing the devoted father-to-be. "I know this is hard, honey," Dad began, using his gentle voice usually reserved for delivering bad news. "But we need to think practically." "Practically." "Sure, let's be practical about emotional devastation." "What are you suggesting?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. Mom and Dad exchanged one of their married couple looks, the kind where entire conversations happen in a glance. "Well," Mom said carefully, "Amber and Eric need to do the right thing. For the baby." "The right thing being what exactly?" "They need to get married," Dad said firmly. "As soon as possible." I stared at them. "You want them to get married?" "It's the responsible thing to do," Mom insisted. "That baby deserves a stable home with married parents." "And what about me?" I asked. "What do I deserve?" Another one of those looks passed between them. "You deserve honesty," Dad said. "And we're being honest. This isn't ideal for anyone, but we have to think about what's best for the innocent child involved." The innocent child? Not their daughter who'd been humiliated and betrayed. The child who didn't even exist yet. "You're right," I said slowly. "We should definitely prioritize the baby. I'm sure you'll all be very happy together." I stood to leave, but Mom caught my arm. "Wait, sweetheart, there's something else we need to discuss." Of course there was. They hadn't finished destroying my life yet. "The wedding date is only 3 weeks away," she continued. "Everything's already arranged. It seems like such a waste to cancel everything when Amber and Eric could just use it instead." The room went completely silent except for the tick of the old grandfather clock in the corner. "Use it instead," I repeated flatly. "Think about it logically," Dad jumped in. "All the arrangements are made. The venue, the officiant, the reception hall. It would save everyone a lot of money and stress." Eric finally spoke up. "Cynthia, I know this seems crazy, but maybe it's actually perfect timing. Like fate. Fate. Right. Fate wanted my sister to steal my wedding. Plus," Amber added quietly, "I'm already starting to show a little." If we wait much longer, I'll be obviously pregnant in the photos. God forbid the family be embarrassed by an obviously pregnant bride. Much better to just swap out the brides and pretend everything was normal. I looked around the table at these people I'd called family for 28 years. My parents, who'd raised me to believe in loyalty and commitment. My sister, who'd shared a bedroom with me until we were teenagers. My former fiancé, who'd promised to love and honor me. All of them waiting for me to graciously step aside and let them use my wedding for their happily ever after. You know what? I said, my voice surprisingly steady. You're absolutely right. Why waste all that planning? Relief flooded their faces. Mom actually smiled. I'm so proud of you, sweetie. I know this is difficult, but you're being so mature about this. Mature. There was that word again. There's just one tiny problem, I continued sweetly. The contracts are all in my name. The venue, the caterer, the band, the florist, everything. The relief faded quickly. That's not a problem, Dad said confidently. We can contact them and explain the situation. I'm sure they'll understand. I nodded thoughtfully. I'm sure they will. Vendors love last-minute changes, especially when there's no additional fee involved. Eric frowned. Additional fee? Oh yes, I said brightly. Contract changes usually cost extra, sometimes quite a bit extra, depending on what's being changed. The silence stretched uncomfortably. But that's okay, I added cheerfully. I'll take care of all the vendor communications. After all, they know me. We've been working together for months. Have you ever experienced a moment when you realized your family didn't actually know you at all? Drop a comment below and tell me about it, because what happened next proved that my family had seriously underestimated who they were dealing with. I could see the wheels turning in their heads, probably wondering why I was being so accommodating. They thought they'd broken me, that I'd just roll over and play dead while they built their new life on the ashes of my old one. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were, and honestly, I was going to enjoy every minute of it. 2 days later, Amber called me crying. Cynthia, we have a problem with the apartment. I was at work, sitting in my small office at the marketing firm where I'd been grinding away for 3 years. Through my window, I could see downtown Portland bustling with life, people going about their normal Wednesday afternoon routines while my world continued to implode. What kind of problem? I asked, setting aside the campaign proposal I'd been pretending to review. The landlord says Eric can't just move in and take over your half of the lease. Something about both tenants needing to sign new paperwork. Ah, yes, the apartment. Our beautiful 2-bedroom sanctuary that I'd fallen in love with the moment we walked through the door 3 months ago. The place where we were supposed to start our married life, complete with the king-size bed we'd picked out together and the dining room set that had taken us weeks to agree on. That's strange, I said, injecting confusion into my voice. Eric should definitely be able to stay there. Did you explain to the landlord that you're pregnant and need stability? Yes, but he said lease agreements don't work that way. He wants to meet with you to discuss options. Options. I like the sound of that. I'll call him this afternoon, I promised. Don't worry about it. But of course, I didn't call the landlord. Instead, I spent my lunch break reviewing the lease agreement I'd signed as the primary tenant. Eric had been added as an authorized resident, which gave him significantly fewer rights than he probably realized. That evening, Eric showed up at my temporary studio apartment, the sad little place I'd been crashing since walking out of his bed 3 days earlier. He looked exhausted and desperate. Not quite the confident man who'd been making plans for my sister's pregnancy. Sin, we need to talk. Nobody had called me Sin in years. I'd always hated the nickname, thought it sounded harsh and cheap. But Eric had used it when we first started dating, back when I thought his casual attitude was charming rather than dismissive. Come in, I said, stepping aside. Though there's not much room. He looked around the cramped space, taking in the fold-out couch and tiny kitchenette. This place is awful. You shouldn't have to live like this. It's temporary, I replied, just until I figure out my next move. He sat heavily on the edge of my couch bed, running his hands through his hair. About the apartment. Oh, right, Amber called. Landlord troubles? The guy is being a complete hard-ass. Says I can't stay there without your permission since you're the primary leaseholder. I nodded sympathetically. That does sound complicated. Look, I know things are weird between us right now, but we're adults. Surely we can work something out that benefits everyone. Adults. Right. Adults like him, who sleep with their fiancé's sister. What kind of arrangement were you thinking? I asked. His face lit up with hope. Maybe you could sign whatever paperwork he needs to transfer your portion of the lease to Amber. That way she and I can stay there, and you're free to find something better suited to your situation. My situation being that I was now single and homeless thanks to him. That sounds reasonable. I said slowly, but there might be fees involved. Breaking a lease early usually costs money. How much money? I pretended to think about it. I'm not sure. Could be a few hundred, could be a few thousand. Depends on what the landlord decides is fair. Eric's face fell. Between his car payment, student loans, and now impending fatherhood, he wasn't exactly swimming in disposable income. Even at Hartwell and Associates, junior consultants didn't make the kind of money that allowed for financial surprises. Maybe we could split the cost, he suggested hopefully. Split the cost of me moving out of my own apartment so you can live there with my sister? I raised an eyebrow. That seems fair to you? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. I know it sounds bad when you put it like that. How else would I put it? Eric? He sighed. Cynthia, I know you hate me right now. I know this whole situation is messed up, but Amber is pregnant with my child. I have to do what's right for them. What's right for them? Not what's right for me, the woman he'd promised to marry. Not what's right for the family I thought we were building together. You're absolutely right, I said. You should definitely do what's right for your new family. The next morning, Mom called while I was getting ready for work. Honey, I've been thinking about the wedding dress. Of course she had. I should have seen this coming from a mile away. What about it? Well, you won't be needing it anymore, and Amber will. It seems silly to let it go to waste when she could wear it instead. My wedding dress, the one I'd spent 6 months searching for, trying on dozens of gowns in bridal shops across the city, the one that had made me cry happy tears when I finally found it. A simple but elegant A-line with delicate lace sleeves and pearl buttons down the back. You want me to give Amber my wedding dress? I know it's a big ask, Mom said carefully, but it would mean so much to her. She's been so emotional about everything, and knowing she could wear her sister's dress would be such a comfort. Her sister's dress. The one that sister had been planning to wear while marrying the man she'd stolen. Where is the dress now? I asked. Still at the bridal shop, I assume. They're holding it for the final alterations. Right. The final alterations that were scheduled for this weekend, designed to make sure every detail was perfect for my dream wedding. I'll call them this afternoon, I said. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. You're being so understanding about all this. I know it can't be easy, but you're handling it with such grace. Grace. Sure, let's call it that. After work, I did call the bridal shop, but not to arrange for Amber to try on my dress. Instead, I made a very different kind of appointment. The bridal shop was exactly as I remembered it. Soft lighting, classical music, and the faint scent of gardenias from the fresh flowers they kept near the entrance. Jennifer, the consultant who'd helped me find my perfect dress, greeted me with a sympathetic smile. Cynthia, I heard about the change in plans. I'm so sorry, honey. Word traveled fast in the wedding industry. Vendors talked to each other, especially when drama was involved. Thank you, I said. It's been a difficult week. I can only imagine. But your mother called yesterday about your sister trying on the dress. That's so sweet that it'll stay in the family. Sweet. Right. Sweet like arsenic in your coffee. Jennifer led me to the same fitting room where I'd fallen in love with the gown 5 months earlier. There it was, hanging in its protective bag, waiting for its moment to shine. Would you like to see it one more time? She asked gently. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She unzipped the bag with practiced care, revealing the dress that was supposed to make me the happiest woman in the world. It was still perfect. Still everything I'd dreamed of since I was a little girl playing dress-up in Mom's closet. It really is beautiful, Jennifer said softly. Your sister is lucky to have such a generous heart. I stared at the dress for a long moment, remembering the joy I'd felt when I first put it on, how I'd imagined walking down the aisle toward Eric, how I'd pictured our first dance as husband and wife, how I'd dreamed of preserving it someday for my own daughter. Actually, I said finally, there's been another change of plans. Jennifer's face fell. Oh no, is your sister not able to wear it after all? Something like that. I turned to face her fully. I'd like to return it. Return it? She looked confused. But honey, the dress has already been altered to your measurements. We can't really... I understand there might be a restocking fee, I interrupted, but I'd prefer to return it rather than let someone else wear it. The truth was, I couldn't bear the thought of Amber walking down the aisle in my dress to my fiancé using my wedding plans. Some things were sacred, even in the middle of this nightmare. Jennifer's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. Oh, sweetie, I see what you're doing. Are you sure about this? Was I sure? I looked at the dress one more time, at the symbol of everything I'd lost and everything I'd thought I wanted. I'm sure. Well, she said slowly, the good news is that we haven't done the final alterations yet. And honestly, given the circumstances, I think we can work something out regarding the fees. An hour later, I walked out of the bridal shop with a check for 70% of what I'd paid for the dress. Not a complete loss, but more importantly, Amber wouldn't be wearing my gown to marry my ex-fiancé. My phone started ringing before I'd even reached my car. "Cynthia Marie, what did you do?" Mom's voice was sharp with anger. "I returned my wedding dress, since I won't be having a wedding. Jennifer called the house looking for me after you left. She said you took the dress back." "That's correct. But we discussed this. Amber was going to wear it." "No, Mom, you discussed it. You told me what you thought should happen. I made my own decision. This is incredibly selfish. That girl is pregnant and emotional, and now you've ruined this for her too." Selfish. There was a new word for the vocabulary list. "She can buy her own dress," I said calmly. "I hear David's Bridal has lovely options in the clearance section. Don't you take that tone with me, young lady. You're being vindictive and cruel." "I'm being practical," I replied, echoing the word they'd used so many times this week. "Why should I pay for another woman's wedding dress?" The silence on the other end told me she'd never considered it from that angle. "Besides," I added, "I'm sure Eric can help her find something appropriate. After all, he's the one marrying her." I hung up before she could respond and sat in my car for a few minutes, feeling strangely calm for the first time since this nightmare began. It felt good to take control of something, anything, in this situation. My phone buzzed with a text from Amber. "How could you do this to me? I'm pregnant." I stared at the message. Being pregnant didn't give her the right to my dress, my fiancé, or my wedding. But apparently everyone in my family thought it did. I typed back, "Congratulations on your pregnancy. I hope you and Eric are very happy together." Then I blocked her number. That evening, I sat in my tiny studio apartment with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine, making a list of everything that needed to be handled. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the band, the photographer. All of it contracted under my name, paid for with my money and credit cards. All of it completely under my control. I opened my laptop and started typing emails, professional and courteous messages to each vendor about reviewing contract terms due to unforeseen circumstances. I scheduled meetings, requested contract reviews, and asked about modification policies. By the time I finished the bottle of wine, I had a very clear picture of what came next. My family thought they could use my wedding for their fairy tale. They thought I'd just hand over everything I'd worked for and walk away quietly. They were about to discover that they'd seriously underestimated me. Again. Friday morning, I took a personal day from work and drove to the law office of Rebecca Martinez, the attorney a friend had recommended for complicated family situations. Her office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel reaching toward the Portland sky. The waiting room was decorated in calming blues and grays, with abstract art that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Rebecca herself was a petite woman in her early 40s, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses and a handshake that meant business. "So," she said, settling behind her mahogany desk, "tell me about your situation." I laid out the whole story. The cheating, the pregnancy, the family's expectation that I'd graciously step aside, and their assumption that they could simply take over my wedding arrangements. Rebecca took notes on a legal pad, occasionally asking clarifying questions about dates and financial details. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me for a moment. "This is certainly a complex situation," she said finally. "But from a legal standpoint, you're in a surprisingly strong position." "How so?" "First, let's talk about the apartment. You said you're the primary leaseholder?" I nodded. "Eric was added as an authorized resident, but I signed the original lease and I'm responsible for the rent. Then you have every right to terminate his occupancy with proper notice, generally 30 days, depending on your lease terms." I felt a spark of hope. "He can't just stay there?" "Not without your permission. And if he refuses to leave, you can begin eviction proceedings." She made another note. "Now, regarding the wedding vendors, everything is contracted under my name. And paid for by you?" "Me and my credit cards, yes." Rebecca smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. "Then you have complete control over those contracts. You can cancel them, modify them, or transfer them as you see fit. The vendors work for you, not your family." "What about cancellation fees?" "That depends on each individual contract. Some vendors have strict cancellation policies, others are more flexible. But here's the thing." She leaned forward. Most reputable vendors would rather work with you to find a solution than deal with a complete cancellation. Bad reviews and word of mouth can destroy a business in the wedding industry." I was starting to understand why my friend had recommended her. "There's something else we should discuss," Rebecca continued. Your sister and former fiancé's assumption that they can simply take over your arrangements could actually work in your favor. How? If they're expecting to use your contracted services without formally transferring the agreements, they're setting themselves up for some very unpleasant surprises. She explained the legal concept of privity of contract, how vendors had no obligation to provide services to anyone other than the person who signed the agreement. If Amber and Eric showed up expecting to use my caterer, my venue, my photographer, they could be turned away. Of course, Rebecca added, you could prevent all that drama by simply canceling everything yourself. I thought about my family, probably spending the weekend planning their wedding using my arrangements. Mom was likely already telling the church ladies about how mature and generous I was being. Dad was probably proud of how the family had come together in crisis. And Amber? She was probably picking out flowers and menu options, playing bride with my money. What would happen if I canceled everything the morning of the wedding? I asked. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. That would certainly be dramatic. Also expensive, depending on the cancellation policies, and potentially devastating for your sister and ex-fiancé. But legal? Completely legal. It's your money, your contracts, your decision. I stared out the window at the bustling street below, watching people go about their Friday afternoon routines. Somewhere across town, Amber and Eric were probably making love in what used to be our bed, planning their future in what used to be our apartment. There's one more thing, I said. The apartment lease. If I wanted Eric out immediately, what would that look like? Rebecca consulted her notes. You'd need to provide written notice. If he refuses to leave voluntarily, you could file for eviction, but that process takes time. However, she paused thoughtfully. If you were concerned about your safety or well-being, or if there were evidence of harassment, we could potentially expedite things. What kind of evidence? Oh, unwanted contact, threats, attempts to coerce you into agreements you don't want to make, that sort of thing. I thought about Eric's visit to my studio apartment, his assumption that I'd help him take over my lease, his complete dismissal of my feelings in favor of doing what's right for his new family. I'll need some time to think about all this, I said. Rebecca handed me her business card. Of course, but Cynthia? Don't let them pressure you into giving away what's yours. You have more power in this situation than they want you to realize. Walking back to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced since finding them together. Control. For the first time in a week, I wasn't reacting to their choices. I wasn't accepting their version of how this story should go. I was about to write my own ending. That weekend, while my family was probably busy planning their perfect replacement wedding, I did something else entirely. I made appointments with every single vendor on my list. It was time they learned that there's a difference between taking someone's man and taking someone's money, and they were about to discover which one actually mattered more. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp October weather that usually made me feel optimistic. Today, it felt like the perfect backdrop for what I was about to do. I started with the florist. Ms. Peterson, I'm so sorry to hear about the change in your wedding plans, Sandra said when I walked into her shop. The scent of roses and lilies filled the air, reminding me of all the hours I'd spent here choosing the perfect arrangements. Thank you, it's been a difficult time, but I'm handling it. Your sister called yesterday asking about switching the order to her name. I told her we'd need to discuss it with you first, since you're our client. Smart woman. I appreciate that. Actually, that's why I'm here. I pulled out the contract we'd signed 5 months ago. $2,100 for bridal bouquet, bridesmaids bouquets, boutonnieres, ceremony arrangements, and centerpieces for the reception. I need to make some changes, I said carefully. Of course. What kind of changes? I'd like to cancel the white roses and replace them with something more seasonal. Sandra looked confused. Seasonal? Yes. I think funeral arrangements would be more appropriate. White lilies, perhaps, very somber and reflective. Her face went pale. Funeral arrangements? But I thought your sister was taking over the wedding. Oh, she can still have flowers, I said sweetly. Just not the ones I ordered. These seem more fitting for the occasion, don't you think? By the time I left, Sandra understood perfectly that any flowers for Amber's wedding would be a completely separate order, at current prices, with no availability until after my originally scheduled date. Next stop, the venue. The Riverstone Manor was exactly as elegant as the day I'd fallen in love with it. Rolling lawns, stone terraces, and views of the Willamette River that took your breath away. The perfect setting for what should have been the perfect day. Cynthia, Margaret, the events coordinator, rushed over as soon as I walked in. I heard about the situation. How are you holding up? Better every day, actually. Your mother called asking about transferring the booking to your sister. I hope you know how sorry we all are that this happened. I studied Margaret's face. She seemed genuinely sympathetic, unlike my family. I've been thinking about that, I said. And I've realized something important. Oh, my contract specifies the Peterson-Williams wedding. But there isn't going to be a Peterson-Williams wedding anymore. Margaret frowned, pulling out her copy of our agreement. Well, technically, Eric Williams will be marrying Amber Peterson, not Cynthia Peterson. Different bride, different wedding. I suppose that's true, but surely we can just modify. For an additional fee, of course. New client, new event, new contract. Margaret's professional smile flickered. There might be some administrative costs involved. I'm sure there will be. But here's the thing, Margaret. I don't want to modify the contract. She blinked. You don't? No, I want to keep my date exactly as booked. November 15th, 5 o'clock ceremony, reception to follow. But you're not getting married. Not to Eric Williams, no, but the contract doesn't specify the groom's name, does it? We both looked at the paperwork. Sure enough, it listed the Peterson-Williams wedding, but the groom's name appeared nowhere in the actual terms. Cynthia, I'm not sure I understand what you're planning. Don't worry about it, I said brightly. Just keep the date reserved exactly as contracted. I'll be in touch about final details. Walking back to my car, I felt that familiar surge of control. 2 down, 4 major vendors to go. The caterer was next, and his reaction was even better than I'd hoped. Your sister wants to use your menu? David from Premier Catering looked incredulous. The one you spent 3 months perfecting? Apparently so. The herb-crusted salmon, the rosemary potatoes, the chocolate torte you special ordered from that bakery in Seattle? I nodded. That's the one. David shook his head. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've seen some family drama. But this takes the cake. No pun intended. So you understand my position? Completely. And I want you to know, we honor our contracts with the people who sign them. If your sister wants our services, she'll need to book separately. At current prices? Of course. Our rates have gone up since you booked last spring. I smiled. David, you're a man of principle. I try to be, especially when someone gets screwed over like this. By the time I finished with the photographer and the band, the message was clear. Amber and Eric could have a wedding, but it wouldn't be the one I'd planned, and it wouldn't be at the prices I'd negotiated. That evening, my phone started ringing. Cynthia, what did you do? Mom's voice was tight with anger. I protected my investments. The florist says you changed the order to funeral flowers. Seemed appropriate. And the venue says they can't transfer the booking without additional fees. Business is business. Mom, this is sabotage. I leaned back on my tiny couch, actually enjoying myself for the first time in weeks. This is capitalism. Before she could respond, I heard Amber crying in the background, and Eric's voice trying to calm her down. You're destroying their wedding out of spite, Mom accused. I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply not paying for their wedding. There's a difference. What do you think will happen next? Drop your predictions in the comments below because, trust me, this story is just getting started. Tuesday brought an unexpected visitor to my office. I was reviewing a client proposal when my assistant knocked. Cynthia? There's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Eric stood in my doorway looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. We need to talk. Do we? I thought you were busy planning your wedding. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Cut the act, Sin. You know exactly what you're doing. I'm working. Something you might want to try, considering you'll have a baby to support soon. He sat down uninvited, running his hands through his hair. The vendors won't work with us. They're all saying they have exclusive contracts with you. Imagine that. This is insane. It's just paperwork. Surely you can sign some documents to transfer everything over. I set down my pen and really looked at him. This man I'd planned to spend my life with, who'd seemed so confident and in control when he was stealing my sister from me. Why would I do that, Eric? Because it's the right thing to do. The right thing. I laughed. You keep using that phrase. I'm not sure you know what it means. His jaw tightened. Look, I know you're hurt. Hurt? I interrupted. Eric, you cheated on me with my sister 3 weeks before our wedding. You got her pregnant. And now you want me to pay for your wedding to her. Do you see how that might seem unreasonable? It's not about paying for anything. It's about not being vindictive. Vindictive, another word for the collection. Here's the thing you don't seem to understand, I said, leaning forward. Those vendors work for me. I hired them. I'm paying them. They answer to me. If you want their services, you need to hire them yourself. At full price? Do you know how much that will cost? Should have thought of that before you decided to have a baby with my sister. His face flushed red. This isn't just about me and you anymore. There's a child involved. You're right. Your child with my sister. Your responsibility. Amber is falling apart. She's crying constantly, barely eating. This stress can't be good for the baby. I felt a flicker of something that might have been guilt, but it passed quickly. Then maybe you should comfort her instead of harassing me. I'm not harassing you. I'm trying to find a reasonable solution. Here's a reasonable solution. Plan your own wedding with your own money. Eric was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up, his expression had changed. What if I made this worth your while? Excuse me? The apartment. What if I paid to break the lease early? Covered all the fees, found you a new place, paid the deposits. Now we were getting somewhere interesting. Keep talking. I'll handle everything. You won't pay a penny. Hell, I'll even throw in an extra month's rent to help you get settled. I pretended to consider it. That's generous. But what about the wedding vendors? What about them? Well, if you're offering to make things right financially, shouldn't that extend to the wedding arrangements I've already paid for? His face fell. Cynthia, be reasonable. That's over $20,000. $22,467 to be exact. I'd been keeping very careful track. You're right, that is a lot of money. My money. Money you were going to spend anyway. On my wedding, to you, which is no longer happening. We stared at each other across my desk. I could see him calculating, trying to figure out what he could afford, what he thought I might accept. What would it take? He asked finally. What would make this go away? What would make this go away? As if I were a problem to be solved instead of a person who'd been betrayed. You want to know what it would take? He nodded eagerly. An apology. What? A real apology. From both of you. Acknowledging what you did, taking responsibility for the pain you caused. Eric's expression shifted to something like hope. Okay, yes, I can do that. And my family needs to stop treating me like I'm the problem. No more pressure to be mature or understanding about the situation. Done? And you need to admit that you two planned this. That it wasn't just a moment of weakness. The hope died in his eyes. Cynthia, 2 months, Eric. 2 months you were sleeping with her while planning our wedding. While I was picking out flowers and tasting cakes and dreaming about our future. It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did. Over and over again. He was quiet, probably realizing that the truth was worse than anything I could do with wedding vendors. If I did all that, he said slowly, would you transfer the contracts? I smiled. No. What? But you just said. I said that's what it would take to make this go away. But Eric? I stood up. This isn't going away. You made sure of that when you decided to betray me. His face went from confused to angry in seconds. So what then? You're just going to destroy everything out of spite? I'm going to protect what's mine. There's a difference. This is crazy. You're acting crazy. Crazy. Sure, let's add that to the list. You know what's crazy, Eric? Expecting the woman you cheated on to pay for your wedding to her sister. He stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. Fine. Have it your way. But don't expect this to end here. Is that a threat? It's a promise. Amber is family. My family now. And we protect each other. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about threats and promises and family loyalty. How quickly he'd shifted from begging to threatening. How easily he'd moved from apologizing to justifying. It was almost like I was seeing him clearly for the first time. Wednesday evening, I was enjoying leftover Thai food and a glass of wine when someone started pounding on my door. Open up, Cynthia. We need to talk. Dad's voice, angrier than I'd heard it since I was 16 and came home past curfew. I looked through the peephole and saw both parents standing in the hallway, Mom clutching her purse like a weapon. Come on, Dad, I called through the door. Is this really how we want to handle this? Open the door, Cynthia Marie. Now. The full name. This was serious. I unlocked the deadbolt and stepped back as they pushed inside, both talking at once. This has gone far enough, Dad began. That poor girl is beside herself, Mom added. You're being selfish and vindictive. The stress could hurt the baby. Stop. I held up a hand. One at a time. You're giving me a headache. Dad took point. His jaw set in that stubborn line I knew all too well. Your behavior this week has been completely unacceptable. Which behavior specifically? Don't play dumb. The vendors, the contracts, the wedding arrangements, you know exactly what you're doing. I nodded. You're right. I do know exactly what I'm doing. Then stop it, Mom said. This vindictive streak isn't like you. Honey, isn't it? How would you know? When in the last week have any of you bothered to ask what I wanted or how I felt? We've been trying to handle a crisis, Dad replied. Sometimes that means making hard decisions. Hard decisions, right. Like deciding I should give up my fiancé to my pregnant sister. It's not that simple and you know it. Actually, it is exactly that simple. Eric chose Amber. Amber chose Eric. You all chose them. I choose me. Mom's face crumpled. Sweetheart, we never chose sides. We're trying to do what's best for everyone. What's best for everyone except me. That's not true, isn't it? When did anyone ask what I needed? When did anyone consider that maybe I shouldn't have to fund their happily ever after? You're being dramatic, Dad said dismissively. Dramatic. Another addition to the growing list. Am I? Let's review. My fiancé cheated on me with my sister. She got pregnant. You suggested they get married using my wedding arrangements. My mother asked me to give her my wedding dress. And when I didn't enthusiastically embrace this plan, I became the problem. They exchanged that look again. The one that meant they'd discussed me and my attitude before coming over. Cynthia, Mom said carefully, we understand you're hurt, but you're a grown woman. You can bounce back from this. Amber is young and pregnant and scared. Amber is 25 years old. She's not a teenager. She's your sister. And I was your daughter. Past tense, apparently. Dad's voice rose. Don't be ridiculous. You're still our daughter. Am I? Because daughters usually get some support when their hearts are broken. Some comfort when they're betrayed. Some protection from the people who hurt them. We're trying to keep this family together. By sacrificing me to make everyone else comfortable. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see the moment they realized I was right, could see the guilt flash across their faces before defensiveness took over. Life isn't fair sometimes, Dad said finally. Sometimes we have to make the best of bad situations. You're absolutely right, I agreed. Sometimes we do have to make the best of bad situations. That's exactly what I'm doing. By destroying their wedding, by protecting my investment, by maintaining my boundaries, by refusing to finance my own humiliation. Mom tried a different approach. What if we paid you back? For the deposits, the contracts, everything? I almost laughed. With what money, Mom? Dad's retirement fund? Your rainy day savings? Their expressions told me I'd hit the mark. They'd never considered the financial reality of what they were asking. The contracts total almost $23,000, I continued. Plus the apartment lease, deposits, moving costs. Are you prepared to cover $28,000 so Amber can have my wedding? Dad's face went pale. $28,000? Give or take, that's what you're asking me to give up. We didn't realize, Mom started. No, you didn't realize, because you didn't bother to think about it from my perspective. I walked to the small table where I'd been eating and sat down, suddenly exhausted. Here's what's going to happen, I said quietly. Amber and Eric will plan their own wedding with their own money. They'll find their own apartment and sign their own lease. And I'll move on with my life. And if we can't afford, Dad's voice was smaller now, then you'll do what millions of other couples do. You'll have a small ceremony with close family and friends. You'll celebrate your love without bankrupting yourselves. You'll start your marriage based on reality instead of fantasy. Mom was crying now. This will destroy our family. Your family was destroyed the moment you decided I was expendable. They left without saying goodbye, and I finished my Thai food in blessed silence. But I knew this wasn't over. People like my family didn't give up easily when their plans were threatened. I just didn't expect them to escalate quite so dramatically. Friday morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages, all from numbers I didn't recognize. The first voicemail made my blood run cold. Is this Cynthia Peterson? This is Channel 8 News. We'd like to get your side of the story about the wedding situation. The second was worse. Ms. Peterson, this is the Portland Tribune. We're running a piece about family wedding drama and would love to include your perspective. By the third message, I understood what had happened. Someone in my family had gone to the media. I threw on clothes and drove to my parents' house, my hands shaking with rage. The front lawn had news vans parked on the street, and I could see reporters waiting on the sidewalk. I parked in the driveway and marched to the front door, ignoring the shouted questions from the media. Ms. Peterson, is it true you're sabotaging your sister's wedding? How do you respond to accusations of family vindictiveness? Are you seeking revenge against your pregnant sister? I let myself in with my key, slamming the door behind me. What did you do? I demanded, finding the whole family gathered in the living room like they were preparing for war. We didn't have a choice, Mom said, not meeting my eyes. You called the news? They called us, Amber said from the couch, one hand protectively over her stomach. Someone from the venue mentioned the situation to a reporter friend. So you decided to give interviews? We told the truth, Dad said defensively. Your version of the truth. Eric stepped forward. They wanted to hear all sides of the story. And what exactly did you tell them? Amber's eyes filled with tears. That we fell in love, and you're trying to destroy our chance at happiness out of jealousy. Jealousy. That you're holding our wedding hostage because you can't handle not being the center of attention, Eric added. I stared at them. These people who'd known me my entire life, who'd reduced me to a caricature for public consumption. You painted me as the villain. You are being the villain, Amber burst out. I'm pregnant and scared, and all I want is a simple wedding to the man I love. The man you stole from your sister. I didn't steal him. We fell in love. You fell in bed. There's a difference. See? She turned to our parents. This is exactly what we told them. She's bitter and vindictive, and she can't be reasoned with. I looked around the room at their faces, united against me, comfortable in their narrative where I was the unreasonable one. You know what? I said finally. You're right. They blinked in surprise. I am bitter. I am vindictive. And I absolutely cannot be reasoned with when it comes to funding my own betrayal. Cynthia, Mom started. No. You want to paint me as the villain? Fine, I'll be the villain. I pulled out my phone and started dialing. Who are you calling? Dad asked nervously. My lawyer. If we're going to have a public battle, let's make sure I have legal protection. Your lawyer? Eric looked alarmed. Oh yes, Rebecca Martinez. She's been very helpful in explaining my rights regarding the apartment lease, the wedding contracts, and harassment from family members. The room went quiet. Harassment? Mom whispered. Showing up at my office, pounding on my door, calling me names, pressuring me to give up my property. Yes, that would qualify. I could see them processing this, realizing that their strategy might have backfired. We're family, Amber said weakly. Are we? Because family doesn't usually go to the media to destroy each other. My phone connected. Rebecca, it's Cynthia. I need to see you immediately. Yes, it's urgent. I hung up and looked at each of them in turn. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call those reporters back and retract your statements. You're going to publicly apologize for involving the media in a private family matter. We will not, Dad said stubbornly. Then you'll deal with the consequences, because I'm about to give those same reporters a very different version of this story. What are you talking about? Eric demanded. I smiled, and it wasn't pleasant. The real story, about the affair that started 2 months before the wedding, about the family that chose the cheaters over the victim, about the pregnant woman who expected her betrayed sister to pay for her wedding. You wouldn't, Amber breathed. Watch me. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Eric, that 30-day notice to vacate the apartment? It starts today. You have until next Friday to find somewhere else to live. You can't do that. I can do exactly that. Check with your lawyer if you have one. Outside, the reporters swarmed me immediately. Ms. Peterson, can you comment on the wedding situation? I looked directly into the nearest camera. I'd be happy to comment. My name is Cynthia Peterson, and 3 weeks ago I discovered my fiancé in bed with my sister. The questions came rapid fire after that, but I was ready for all of them. By the time I finished my impromptu press conference, my family's narrative had been completely destroyed, and I was just getting started. The story went viral. By Saturday morning, Dark's wedding revenge was trending on social media. My doorbell rang constantly with reporters wanting follow-up interviews. My phone buzzed with messages from strangers offering support and sharing their own betrayal stories. The Portland Tribune ran a full piece titled, Sister versus Sister, When Wedding Plans Turn Toxic. Channel 8 featured it as their weekend human interest story. 3 different morning shows wanted me for interviews. But the real victory came Monday morning when my lawyer called. Cynthia, you need to get down here immediately. We have a situation. I found Rebecca in her office with a stack of legal documents and a very satisfied expression. What's going on? Eric Williams just agreed to settle. Settle what? Everything. The apartment, the wedding contracts, damages for emotional distress. He wants this to go away before it gets worse. She slid a document across the desk. The numbers made my eyes widen. $22,000? Plus, he'll vacate the apartment immediately and forfeit his security deposit. And there's more. More? He's agreed to make a public statement taking full responsibility for the affair and absolving you of any wrongdoing in the wedding vendor situation. I stared at the settlement offer, hardly believing it was real. Why would he agree to this? Rebecca smiled. Apparently, his employer saw the news coverage. Hartwell and Associates is a boutique firm that caters to Portland's elite. A senior financial consultant who cheats on his fiancée with her sister and then goes to the media about it isn't exactly the image they want for client relations. They fired him? Worse. They put him on unpaid administrative leave pending a full review of his professional conduct. Plus, one of their biggest clients, Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore, called personally to express her disgust with his behavior. She threatened to pull her account if he remained employed there. The irony was delicious. Eric's career, the stable income that had made him such a catch, was now threatened by the very betrayal that had destroyed our relationship. There's one condition, Rebecca continued. You have to agree not to pursue any further legal action and to stop talking to the media about the situation. I considered this. The money would be nice, but more importantly, it would force Eric to take responsibility publicly. What about Amber? What about my family? That's separate. This settlement is just between you and Eric. And if I don't accept it, then he'll likely lose his job anyway, and you'll be dealing with a bitter, unemployed man who has nothing left to lose. Plus, his ability to pay any judgment would be severely compromised. She was right. A bird in the hand was worth two in the bush. I'll take it. We spent the next hour reviewing the settlement terms. Eric would transfer $22,000 to my account within 48 hours. He'd vacate the apartment by Wednesday. He'd sign a statement acknowledging that his actions had caused the wedding cancellations and that I was within my rights to protect my financial interests. Most importantly, he'd agreed to supervised contact only for any future interactions, meaning he couldn't show up at my office or apartment uninvited. What about the wedding itself? I asked. What about it? They still need to get married somewhere. Rebecca shrugged. Not your problem. You'll have your money, your apartment back, and legal protection from further harassment. That afternoon, I got a call from Sandra at the flower shop. Cynthia, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted you to know that your sister and her fiancé came in this morning. Oh? They wanted to book new arrangements for this Saturday. Emergency wedding, they said. This Saturday? That was only 5 days away. Yes. I told them our earliest availability is December, but they seemed desperate. Kept saying they had to get married this weekend. Interesting. Did they say why? Something about family pressure and wanting to get it over with. Honestly, they both looked terrible, like they hadn't slept in days. After Sandra hung up, I sat in my tiny apartment thinking about desperation and family pressure and emergency weddings, about how quickly things could unravel when the truth came out. My phone rang. Mom's number. Hello? Cynthia. Her voice was barely a whisper. We need to talk. Do we? Please come over. Alone. Something in her tone made me agree. I drove to the house where I'd grown up, noticing how different it looked somehow. Smaller. Shabbier. Less like the fortress of family unity I'd once thought it was. Mom answered the door with red, swollen eyes. She looked like she'd aged 5 years in the past week. Come in, sweetheart. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Where is everyone? Your father is at work. Amber and Eric went to look at apartments. Apartments? She nodded miserably. Eric has to be out of your place by Wednesday. They've been staying here, but... She trailed off. But what? Your father is furious with both of them. Says they've brought shame on our family with all this media attention. He told them they need to find somewhere else to go after the wedding. I felt a flicker of surprise. Dad was holding someone accountable? And the wedding? Saturday. Justice of the peace. Just immediate family. Nothing fancy. We sat in the living room where I'd grown up, where we'd opened Christmas presents and celebrated birthdays, and where, just 2 weeks ago, they'd told me to step aside for my pregnant sister. I owe you an apology, Mom said finally. Yes, you do. I failed you, Cynthia. As a mother, I failed you completely. The words I'd been waiting to hear, but they felt hollow now. Too late to undo the damage. Why, Mom? Why did you choose them over me? She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Because I thought you were strong enough to handle it, she said eventually. You've always been the responsible one, the one who lands on her feet. I thought you'd be okay. And Amber? Amber has always needed more help, more protection. When she said she was pregnant and scared, I went into protection mode. You threw me away to protect her. I didn't see it that way at the time. How do you see it now? She met my eyes for the first time since I'd arrived. Now I see that I lost one daughter trying to save the other, and I may have lost them both. What do you mean? Amber blames me for how this all turned out. Says if I'd handled it better, you never would have gone to the media. Eric barely speaks to any of us. Your father? She shrugged helplessly. Your father says this whole mess is my fault for interfering in the first place. I felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not forgiveness, but pity for this woman who'd tried to control an impossible situation and lost everything in the process. What do you want from me, Mom? I want my daughter back. Which daughter? Both of you. But I know that's probably impossible now. She was right. It probably was impossible. But as I looked at her sitting there, broken and remorseful, I realized something important. I didn't need her apology to move on with my life. Saturday came faster than I expected. While Amber was having her emergency courthouse wedding, I was doing something I'd been putting off for months. Apartment hunting. The settlement money had given me options I'd never had before. Instead of cramped studios or shared spaces, I could afford a real one-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood I actually wanted to live in. The place I fell in love with was perfect. Hardwood floors, big windows, a kitchen with actual counter space, and a bathtub deep enough to get lost in. It felt like a fresh start, like the life I'd been meant to live. When can you move in? The landlord asked as I signed the lease. Next week. And references? I handed him Rebecca's business card along with my employment verification and bank statements. Having a lawyer as a character reference definitely had its perks. That evening, as I packed boxes in my tiny studio, my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Cynthia? It's Eric. I almost hung up immediately, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? I wanted to thank you. Excuse me? For agreeing to the settlement. I know you could have made this much worse. I sat down heavily on my couch. You're thanking me for not destroying your life completely? I'm thanking you for letting me try to fix what I broke. And have you? Fixed it? A long pause. I don't know. Maybe. We got married today. I heard. Congratulations. Cynthia. His voice cracked slightly. I know this doesn't matter now, but I am sorry. Really, truly sorry for what I did to you. You're right. It doesn't matter now. I know, but I needed to say it anyway. After he hung up, I sat in the quiet of my little apartment, thinking about apologies and second chances, and the strange way life unfolds when you stop trying to control it. A year later, I was settled into my new place and thriving in my new life. The marketing firm had promoted me to senior account manager after the wedding vendor crisis, demonstrated exactly how well I could handle difficult clients and complex negotiations. Turns out being ruthless had its advantages in business too. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious yet, but it felt good to remember that not all men were like Eric. I'd made new friends, taken up rock climbing, and discovered that I actually loved living alone. Amber had her baby in May, a healthy boy they named Tyler. I sent a gift card to the hospital, but we hadn't spoken since the day I moved out of the old apartment. From what I heard through the family grapevine, they were struggling financially. Eric's career had never fully recovered from the media scandal. Mom called occasionally, stilted conversations where we both pretended things might eventually return to normal. Dad and I exchanged birthday cards. It wasn't much, but it was something. The real surprise came on a Tuesday morning in September when my assistant buzzed me at work. Cynthia, there's someone here to see you. Says she's your sister. Amber stood in my office doorway looking exhausted but determined. Motherhood had changed her, made her seem older somehow, more serious. Can I sit down? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. How's the baby? He's good, healthy, looks like Eric. And Eric? We're managing. It's harder than I thought it would be. I waited, not sure why she was here, but curious enough to let her talk. I came to apologize, she said finally. Okay. Not because Mom told me to, or because I want something from you. Because I've spent the last year thinking about what we did to you, and I finally understand how wrong it was. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or agenda. All I saw was exhaustion and what looked like genuine remorse. What changed your mind? Tyler. Having a baby made me think about what kind of family I want him to grow up in, what kind of example I want to set. And I want him to know his aunt. I want him to grow up in a family where people take care of each other instead of using each other. I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the possibility of it. Amber, what you and Eric did to me was unforgivable. You didn't just betray me, you tried to steal my entire life. I know. I'm not ready to pretend it didn't happen or that we can just go back to being sisters like before. I understand. But, I continued, maybe we can figure out how to be something else. Something new. She nodded, tears starting to fall. I'd like that. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We didn't hug and cry and promise to be best friends. But it was a beginning, maybe the first honest conversation we'd ever had. As she left, I realized something important. I'd gotten my revenge, my money, and my independence. But what mattered most was that I'd gotten my self-respect back. I'd learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to let others define your worth. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. And sometimes the family that hurts you the most is the one that teaches you who you really are. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like and subscribe for more real-life drama. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself? Drop your stories in the comments below. I'm Cynthia Peterson, and this is how I learned that the most important person in your corner should always be yourself.